My family laughed at my $10 hoodie at my sister's lavish engagement party, and her fiancé sneered, "Did you Uber here?" They've always thought I was the family failure, so I just nodded. The next morning, that same fiancé walked into my boardroom, asking me, the woman in the hoodie, for a multi-million-dollar investment. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The private club was nauseatingly opulent. It smelled like old money and new, a cloying mix of antique wood polish and expensive, competing perfumes. I had been working for 72 hours straight, closing a brutal acquisition deal that had involved 3 different time zones and enough caffeine to stop a human heart. I was exhausted, my brain felt like cotton, and all I wanted was my bed. Instead, I was at my sister Sophie's engagement party. I hadn't even had time to go home. I'd come straight from the office, still in what my CFO, Benedict, called my crisis uniform: a worn, comfortable $10 gray hoodie, a pair of faded jeans, and sneakers. It was the last thing on my mind. My company had just absorbed a major competitor, a move that would secure our position in the sustainable tech market for the next decade. My clothes were irrelevant. To my family, however, they were everything. I spotted them holding court by a massive, floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city. My sister, Sophie, looked like a princess from a movie, draped in a white silk dress that probably cost more than my first car. She was flanked by our aunts, uncles, and cousins, all of them glittering and preened. As I approached, the bubble of cheerful conversation didn't just quiet down, it popped. Every eye went to my hoodie. "Emma," my mother said, her voice tight with that familiar, brittle disappointment. "You look tired." "I am, Mom. It's been a long week," I said, trying to summon a smile. Sophie, however, had no such restraint. Her perfectly painted smile faltered, replaced by a flash of genuine anger. "Emma, really? You couldn't try, just once? It's my engagement party. Look at you. It's embarrassing." "I'm sorry, Sophie, work was intense," I offered weakly. "Work," my uncle snorted, adjusting his bow tie. "Still tinkering with those little computer projects in your garage, Emma." They still thought I ran a glorified repair shop. I had never corrected them. Years ago, I had tried to explain what my company, Heliostech, did, that we were developing carbon capture technology and advanced battery storage. Their eyes had glazed over. To them, if it wasn't law, medicine, or real estate, it wasn't a real job. It was just Emma's hobby. It was then that he appeared, sliding an arm around Sophie's waist. Marcus, the fiancé. I had only met him once before, and my impression had been one of polished, empty arrogance. He was handsome in a way that seemed focus-grouped, with perfect teeth and a watch that screamed its price tag across the room. He looked me up and down, a slow, condescending smirk spreading across his face. "This is her," Sophie said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "This is my sister, Emma." Marcus chuckled. It wasn't a kind sound. "This is the brilliant, older sister you told me about, the one who's artistic." He leaned in, his voice loud enough for everyone in our circle to hear. "Rough night, did you Uber here?" The implication was clear. I couldn't possibly afford a car. I couldn't possibly afford the valet. I was the poor relation, the family failure, the one who had dropped out of a prestigious college all those years ago and never recovered. The laughter from my cousins was polite but sharp. I looked at Sophie, hoping for even a flicker of defense. She just looked away, fussing with Marcus's lapel, her cheeks pink with shame. Not shame for him, but shame for me. I was too tired to fight. Too tired to explain that I had driven myself in a car that cost more than his entire outfit, or that the tinkering I did was currently valued at $9 billion. It didn't matter. In their eyes, I was, and always would be, the girl in the $10 hoodie. I gave a small, weary nod, something like that. "Well," Marcus said, patting my shoulder with a painful amount of condescension, Don't bother the servers too much. I'm sure the champagne is a bit outside your usual price range." He steered Sophie away, and the laughter resumed, leaving me standing alone in their wake. I stayed for another 10 minutes, just long enough to be polite, before slipping out the door. No one noticed me leave. As I sat in my car, the quiet hum of the high-performance electric engine a stark contrast to the noise inside, I let my head fall back against the headrest. The humiliation was a familiar, dull ache, but underneath it, a new, cold feeling was settling in. It wasn't anger, not yet, it was resolve. They thought I was a joke. They had forgotten who I was, what I had built. They had forgotten everything. The betrayal, in that moment, felt sharper and more painful than any business negotiation I had ever endured. The next day was a Saturday. I had blessedly, mercifully, slept for 10 solid hours, and the fog of exhaustion was finally beginning to lift. I was sitting at my kitchen island, nursing a cup of coffee and reviewing quarterly projections on my laptop, when my phone buzzed. It was Sophie. I sighed, bracing myself, and tapped the speakerphone. "Hi, Sophie." "I cannot believe you, Emma." "No hello, no how are you?" Just the immediate, shrill cut of her indignation. "Good morning to you too," I said dryly, taking a sip of coffee. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? Marcus's parents were there, his boss was there, and my sister, my own sister, shows up looking like she just rolled out of a dumpster. "A hoodie, Emma, a gray hoodie." "It was clean," I said, unable to help myself. "That's not the point, and you know it. It's about respect. You have none. You just float through life in your own little world doing your projects, and you don't care who you humiliate. Marcus's boss, Henry, even asked if you were, struggling. He offered to connect me with a charity." I closed my eyes. Henry, I knew that name. Henry Patterson, CEO of Patterson Capital Investments, a shark, a very, very wealthy shark. So that was who Marcus worked for. Interesting. "Sophie, I was working. I barely made it there as it was. I'm sorry if my clothes weren't up to par, but it was the best I could do." "That's your problem, Emma. It's always the best you can do, and it's never good enough," she snapped. "Why can't you just be normal? Get a real job, buy a nice dress. Why is that so hard for you?" The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. Here I was, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, being told to get a real job by my sister, whose entire career consisted of posting pictures of sponsored products on the internet. "I have a real job, Sophie." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "We all know you're just living off what Mom left you. It's sad. I'm just lucky Marcus is so successful. He's going to take care of me. He's going to take care of this whole family." A prickle of alarm went through me. "What do you mean?" "He's got a huge presentation on Monday. Life-changing. He's pitching this massive new energy fund to some private tech firm. He said if he lands this, we're set for life. A house in the Hamptons, a new boat, everything. He's brilliant, Emma. He's going to be one of the most powerful men in the city." She gushed, her voice filled with a reverence that made my stomach turn. This new energy fund? My senses were on high alert. "A tech firm?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Which one?" "Oh, I don't know, some boring name. Helios something. Who cares? The point is, he's a success. He makes an effort. You should try it sometime. I've got to go. We're looking at yachts." The line clicked dead. I stared at the phone, the pieces clicking into place with a sickening thud. Helios Tech, my company. Marcus was pitching my company on Monday. The humiliation from the night before was instantly replaced by a cold, sharp dread. Marcus wasn't just an arrogant fool. He was an arrogant fool who was about to walk into my boardroom. And my sister, the person whose future was now tied to his, had just broadcasted his entire, life-changing plan to me. I picked up my phone and sent a text to Benedict, my CFO. "Me, Benedict, can you send me the full due diligence package on the Patterson Capital pitch for Monday? I want to review it myself this weekend." My phone buzzed almost immediately. "Benedict, of course, everything okay? I thought you were taking the weekend off. Me, change of plans. I'll be leading the Monday meeting. Benedict, they're just a mid-level fund. This is SVP Marcus last name. You don't need to handle this, I can. Me, no, I need to handle this one personally. I thought about Sophie, her voice dripping with disdain as she told me to get a real job. I thought about Marcus, his cruel smirk as he asked if I'd taken an Uber. Sophie was right about one thing. He was pitching a company called Helios something. But she had forgotten one crucial thing. She had forgotten who had founded it. They had all forgotten. The roots of my family's willful ignorance ran deep, planted 20 years ago in the sterile white halls of a hospital. I was 19, in my sophomore year at a top-tier university, on a full-ride scholarship for physics. Sophie was a carefree 14-year-old, already obsessed with fashion and popularity. Then, our mother got sick. It was a brutal, fast-moving cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months. My father had passed years earlier, leaving us with a modest life insurance policy. Why in a house that was falling apart? There was no one else. So I dropped out. I came home and spent the next year learning to administer IV drips, manage pain medication schedules, and hold my mother's hand as she faded. Sophie, by contrast, retreated. She couldn't handle the sickness, the fear, the reality of it. She buried herself in school, friends, and applying for summer programs abroad. I didn't blame her. She was just a kid. I was the older sister. It was my job. When our mother passed, she left us what little she had, the house and about $50,000 in savings. Sophie, then accepted into a university in London, took half of the money for her tuition and living expenses. It was what Mom would have wanted. I took my half and stayed in the garage of the house we could no longer afford. While Sophie was attending fashion shows and networking at European parties, I was soldering circuit boards and writing code. I sold the house, moved into a tiny apartment, and poured every cent and every waking hour into an idea I'd had in my physics classes. A new, hyper-efficient method for utility-scale battery storage. For the first 5 years, I lived on instant noodles and desperation. I took on freelance coding jobs just to pay for new components. I was the dropout, the failure, the eccentric girl who tinkered in her garage. When Sophie came home for holidays, draped in new clothes and talking about her glamorous friends, I was the embarrassing, oil-stained smudge in the family photos. When are you going to give up this thing, Emma, and get a real job? She'd ask, her nose wrinkled at the mess on my dining table. It's close, I'd murmur, not looking up from a schematic. The family narrative was set in stone. Sophie was the bright, successful, cosmopolitan one. I was the stagnant, sad underachiever stuck in the past, unable to move on from Mom's death. Then I had my breakthrough. I solved the energy loss problem. I secured my first patent. Within 6 months, I had venture capital. Within 2 years, Helios Tech was born. Within 5, we were profitable. Now, 10 years later, we were a quiet giant in the sustainable energy sector, the backbone for half the green energy grids in the country. I never told them. It wasn't a deliberate secret at first. I tried. I'd mention a big contract or a new office, and my mother's sisters would just pat my hand and say, "That's nice, dear. Did you hear Sophie is modeling for a magazine in Paris?" My success was incomprehensible to them. It didn't look like their definition of success. I didn't live in a penthouse. I lived in a modest, private condo. I didn't wear designer labels. I wore hoodies and jeans because I was comfortable in them. I didn't go to galas. I went to energy symposiums and labs. My wealth was silent. It was in stock, in patents, in the 5,000 employees who worked for me. The disconnect had become a chasm. I was the family charity case. And now, Marcus was standing on the other side of that chasm, about to try and jump. He was so perfectly a product of Sophie's world. All shine, no substance. I'd heard the whispers about him. He was a ruthless climber at Patterson Capital. He was known for bold, risky plays and for taking credit for other people's work. He was all about status, the right clubs, the right car, the right woman on his arm. Sophie, with her social media followers and established family name, was the perfect accessory. His disdain for me at the party wasn't just a simple slight, it was a calculated move. By putting me down, he was elevating himself and Sophie. He was reinforcing the family narrative: I am the successful one, she is the failure. We are the ones who matter. He saw me as a loser, a drain on the family he was marrying into. He had openly asked Sophie why she even bothered with me. The file Benedict had sent over was thin. That was the only word for it. Marcus was proposing a new green energy impact fund. On the surface, it was all the right buzzwords: sustainable, disruptive, next-gen, but the numbers were a fantasy. The projections were wildly optimistic, based on unproven technologies and speculative market shifts. He was promising returns that were, to be blunt, impossible. He wasn't just arrogant, he was sloppy. He was asking Heliostech for a $100 million seed investment. He was asking me for $100 million. He hadn't done his homework, not on the market and certainly not on the company he was pitching. A simple search of our board members, of our executive team, would have shown my name, but he hadn't looked. He, like my family, had seen the hoodie and a quiet woman and assumed nothing. He assumed I was no one. Monday morning arrived with a crisp, cool dawn. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my bedroom, a place my family had never seen. It was a spacious, minimalist apartment overlooking the city, but from a different, quieter angle than my sister's flashy downtown high-rise. I intentionally bypassed the sharp, tailored power suits I usually wore for major negotiations. Instead, I chose a simple, dark gray cashmere turtleneck, a pair of black tailored trousers, and flat, elegant leather shoes. It was professional, understated, and comfortable. It was me. I wanted him to see me, the woman from the party, before he saw the CEO. When I arrived at the Heliostech campus, a sprawling, beautifully designed set of buildings that looked more like a university than a corporation, Benedict was waiting for me in my office. Benedict, my CFO, was a man of 55, with a brilliant financial mind and a loyalty I trusted more than anyone's. He'd been with me since the garage days. Back when I'd paid him in stock options, we both prayed would one day be worth something. Now, he was one of the wealthiest men in the state, and he still wore tweed jackets and drove a 10-year-old Volvo. "Emma," he said, handing me a coffee, "you look rested, which is terrifying. It means you're about to dismantle someone." I smiled. "Good morning, Benedict. Is the pitch deck queued up in the main boardroom?" "It is, and the rest of the board is joining via video link. They're curious why you're taking this meeting personally." "Let's call it a matter of family interest," I said, taking a sip. "Understood," he said, his eyes twinkling. He knew my family. He'd been there for years of my venting about them. "Henry Patterson is also confirmed to be attending. It seems your Mr. Marcus has brought his own boss to watch him shine." This was even better. Henry Patterson, the CEO of the entire firm. The man who had allegedly offered to connect Sophie with a charity for her struggling sister. "Excellent," I said. "Let's make sure the audio is perfect. I want everyone to hear this." As we walked to the boardroom, my mind shifted. This was no longer personal. Or rather, it was, but I had to channel that personal sting into professional precision. Marcus wasn't just an arrogant fiancé, he was a bad investment. He was walking into my house to ask for my money with a plan built on sand. My clever trap was not a trap at all. It was my life. It was my company. The leverage I had was simply the truth. My investigation had been a 2-hour deep dive on Sunday afternoon, cross-referencing his fund's proposals with our own proprietary market data. His entire premise was built on a new type of solar panel technology that he claimed was revolutionary. I knew the company he was sourcing it from. I had personally vetted them 6 months ago. Their tech was flawed. It overheated, had a high failure rate, and the CEO was currently under investigation. Marcus hadn't just been sloppy, He was either deeply incompetent or knowingly fraudulent. He was pitching a dead-on-arrival product. I sat at the head of the long, polished table, my laptop open. Benedict sat to my right. The large screens at the end of the room lit up with the faces of my other board members. "Emma, good to see you," said our lead director. "Surprised to have you on this one." "Just doing my due diligence," I said calmly. "I have a particular interest in this sector." My assistant's voice came over the intercom. "Ms. Evans, the team from Patterson Capital is here." "Send them in, please," I said. The heavy glass door swung open. 3 men walked in, all in identical, slick navy blue suits. 2 were junior analysts, clutching laptops. And in the lead, radiating an almost comical amount of swagger, was Marcus. He was laughing at something one of his analysts had said. He didn't even look at the head of the table. He, like his junior team, immediately focused on Benedict, the only other man in a suit in the room. "Benedict, I assume," Marcus said, striding forward and extending his hand to my CFO. "Marcus' last name. Great to finally meet. This," he said, gesturing around the room, "is a very impressive setup you've got. And that must be Mr. Patterson," he said, nodding respectfully to the screen where Henry's face was displayed. "Marcus," Henry's voice boomed, "don't waste their time, get to it." "Of course," Marcus said. He turned to his team. "Let's get set up." He still hadn't looked at me. I was just part of the furniture. A secretary, maybe, or a junior associate there to take notes. I just sat, watched, and waited. He plugged in his laptop, and his presentation's title screen flashed onto the main wall. "The Future of Green, an Impact Fund." "Gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice smooth and practiced. "And, lady," he gave me a cursory, dismissive nod, as if just noticing me. "What we are about to show you is not just an investment, it is a revolution." I let him talk. For 20 minutes, Marcus put on a show. He paced. He gesticulated. He used words like synergy, disruption, and paradigm shift. He painted a beautiful picture of a future where his fund would single-handedly solve the energy crisis, all while delivering a 40% return to its initial investors. He directed every word, every point of eye contact, to Benedict and to the screen where Henry Patterson was watching. I just sat, my hands steepled, my expression neutral. I was invisible to him. It was a fascinating, if infuriating, display of unconscious bias. He could not see power in a woman sitting quietly at the head of a table. He finally arrived at his key technology, the flawed solar panels. "And this," he said, clicking to a slide with a glossy, computer-generated image of a panel, "is our crown jewel. A new photovoltaic technology from SunSpark Innovations that will render all current models obsolete. It is 50% more efficient, 30% cheaper to produce, and we have secured exclusive rights." He paused for dramatic effect. "Heliostex's investment will be used to scale production and begin global deployment. We are offering you the chance to get in on the ground floor of the single biggest leap in energy since the lithium-ion battery." He finished with a flourish and a confident smile. "Thank you, I'd be happy to answer any questions." A brief silence filled the room. Benedict looked at me. The board members on the screen looked at me. It was time. I unsteepled my fingers and placed my hands flat on the table. "I have a question, Mr. Last Name," I said. My voice, calm and clear, cut through the air. Marcus physically startled. He had clearly forgotten I was there. He turned to me, his expression a mask of annoyed confusion, as if a chair had just spoken. "Yes," he said, drawing the word out, clearly forgetting my name, if he ever even registered it. "You mentioned SunSpark Innovations," I said, my eyes fixed on his. "Can you tell me about their CEO, Thomas Riley?" Marcus blinked. This was not the question he had expected. "Mr. Riley, he's a visionary, a brilliant mind. We're very confident in his leadership." "Are you," I asked, leaning forward slightly, "are you aware that Mr. Riley is currently the subject of a federal investigation for wire fraud and for misrepresenting technology to investors. The color drained from Marcus's face. His smile vanished. That's a baseless rumor, our due diligence. Your due diligence seems to have missed the official filing from the Southern District of New York, I said, tapping my own laptop. I can send it to you, if you'd like. We also ran our own independent analysis of his technology 6 months ago. It doesn't work. The panels have a catastrophic failure rate at temperatures above 95 degrees. Your crown jewel, Mr. Last Name, is a dud. Now, wait a minute, Marcus sputtered, his voice rising in panic. You don't know what you're talking about. Our internal numbers are solid. Your numbers, I said, clicking my mouse, are not just optimistic. They're fictional. Your entire projection is based on a technology that will never be approved for market. You are either profoundly incompetent or you are committing fraud. Which is it? You have no right, he lashed out, his voice cracking. Who even are you? Are you the assistant, the secretary? Where is the actual decision-maker? He turned frantically to Benedict. Are you going to let her sabotage this? Benedict didn't even look at him. He just kept his eyes on me, a faint smile on his lips. On the main screen, Henry Patterson's face had turned to stone. Marcus, Henry's voice cut in, sharp as glass. Answer the woman's question. Marcus looked back at me, his eyes wide with a dawning, sickening horror. He was finally seeing me. He was finally connecting the dots. The quiet woman at the table, the name of the company, Helios. You, he whispered, his face shade white. I gave him a small, cold smile. I let the silence stretch out, filling the room, pressing down on him. Mr. Marcus' last name? I said, my voice perfectly level. My name is Emma Evans. I am the founder, CEO, and chairwoman of the board of Helios Tech. I am the decision maker. And the baseless rumor I mentioned? It came from my legal team, who discovered it while we were preparing to sue Sunspark for attempting to sell us that same fraudulent tech. I watched the man who, 48 hours earlier, had mocked me for my clothes and my perceived poverty, completely and utterly disintegrate. His swagger evaporated, leaving behind a terrified, hollow shell. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. So, I continued, leaning back in my chair. Let's go back to your numbers. Please, explain to me and to your boss, Mr. Patterson, why you are pitching a multi-million-dollar fund based on a lie. The boardroom, which had moments before been filled with Marcus's booming voice, was now so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Marcus was frozen, his face cycling through shades of red and white. He looked like a fish pulled from the water, gulping uselessly for air. The data, he stammered, fumbling with his laptop. There must be a mistake, our team V. Edit this, it was solid. Your team, I asked, raising an eyebrow. Or did you vet it, Marcus? Did you personally fly out and see the tech in action? Did you run the stress tests? Or did you just read their marketing brochure and believe it because you wanted to? He didn't have an answer. He just stared at me, his eyes wide with betrayal, as if I were the one who had tricked him. Emma, Ms. Evans, You didn't, did you? I said, my voice softening into a tone of pure, clinical disappointment. You didn't do the work. You saw a shiny object, you wrapped it in buzzwords, and you brought it here to my company, asking for $100 million. You brought it to your own CEO, Mr. Patterson, and you wasted his time. On the screen, Henry Patterson's face was thunderous. He wasn't just angry, he was mortified. Marcus, Henry barked, is what she's saying true? Sir, it's a misunderstanding. She's biased. Marcus tried, a desperate, pathetic lunge. We know each other. She's my fiancé's sister. She's doing this to get back at me. This was it, the last desperate gasp. I had to give him credit. It was a bold, if idiotic, move. The board members on the screen looked confused, glancing at each other. Benedict just sighed, shaking his head at the man's sheer stupidity. I looked directly at Henry Patterson's image on the screen. You are correct, Mr. Patterson. I do know Marcus. He's engaged to my sister, Sophie. In fact, I saw him just this Saturday at their engagement party. Marcus looked momentarily relieved, as if this admission proved his point. He didn't know me at all. I continued. At that party, Marcus and my family, who believe I am an unemployed failure, mocked my $10 hoodie. He asked me, with a great deal of condescension, if I had taken an Uber to the event. He assumed I was poor, unimportant, and invisible. I let that hang in the air. He didn't do his homework on Sunspark, and he didn't do his homework on the company he was pitching. If he had, he would have known that the struggling sister, the family failure, was the one person he needed to impress. He didn't. He chose to mock her instead. I turned my gaze back to Marcus. Your personal behavior, Marcus, is frankly appalling, but I don't care about that. I'm not rejecting this proposal because you were rude to me at a party. I'm rejecting it because it's a house of cards. You are either a fool or a liar, and frankly, we don't invest in either. The two junior analysts behind Marcus looked like they wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. Marcus' last name? Henry's voice was a roar. You brought me into a meeting with Emma Evans to pitch her a fraudulent solar panel, and you spent the weekend insulting her. The full, catastrophic, career-ending weight of his mistake finally landed on Marcus. He actually swayed on his feet, grabbing the table for support. Sir, I didn't know. I had no idea. Sophie never said. It's not her job to tell you, you idiot, Henry bellowed. It's your job to know who you're pitching. It's your job to do the research. You didn't just fail, you've embarrassed this entire firm. We're done here. The screen with Henry's face went black. The other board members followed suit, their screens winking out one by one, each with a curt, "Thank you, Emma." Finally, it was just me, Benedict, and the Patterson Capital team in the room. Marcus, I said, my voice quiet again, the meeting is over. He stared at me, his face a ruin of sweat and terror. He didn't move. Get out, Benedict said, his voice low and firm. The two junior analysts scrambled to grab their laptops, not even looking at their boss. They fled the room. Marcus stood there for another second, his mouth opening and closing before he seemed to deflate. He turned, his expensive suit looking suddenly cheap and oversized, and stumbled out of the boardroom, not even taking his presentation laptop with him. The door clicked shut, and the room was silent. Benedict let out a long, slow whistle. Well, that was efficient. I closed my laptop. It was necessary. He's finished, Benedict said, standing up. Henry Patterson will have his resignation on the desk before lunch. He won't just fire him, he'll blackball him. You don't embarrass a man like Henry and survive. I nodded, feeling not triumph, but a deep, profound weariness. The professional part was over. Now came the personal. My phone was already buzzing on the table. It was Sophie, of course it was. I let the phone buzz, once, twice, 3 times. I took a deep breath, stood up, and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows of the boardroom, looking out over the campus I had built. My campus, my company, my life. The buzzing finally stopped, then immediately started again. She was frantic. Marcus must have called her from the elevator, or the lobby, or the curb. I picked up, "Hello, Sophie." "What did you do?" The shriek was so loud, I had to pull the phone away from my ear. It was a raw, primal scream of pure, unadulterated rage. "What did you do to HIM, Emma? He's crying. He said you ruined HIM. He said you got HIM fired. Good morning, Sophie. I'm in a meeting. Is this important?" I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. Is it important? Is it? You did this. You were jealous. You've always been jealous of me. You couldn't stand that I was happy, that I had someone successful, so what did you do? I did my job, I said simply. Marcus brought a proposal to my company. I reviewed it. It was a bad proposal, Sophie. It was based on lies, so I rejected it. His boss, Henry Patterson, was in the meeting. He was the one who was upset. It seems Marcus didn't do his research. There was a stunned silence on the other end. All I could hear was her sharp, ragged breathing. Your company, she whispered, the words confused. What are you talking about? Your little garage business. What does that have to do with Henry Patterson? The climax wasn't in the boardroom. The climax was here now, on this phone call. The final, systematic exposure of the truth. Sophie, I said, my patience, worn thin over 2 decades, finally snapping. I don't have a garage business. I haven't for 15 years. The little project I was tinkering with is Helios Deck. The company Marcus was pitching. I am the founder and CEO. The buildings he was in, they're mine. The $100 million he was asking for, it's my money. More silence. I could picture her perfect makeup running, her mind refusing to process the words. No, she said. It was a weak, flimsy denial. No, you're lying. You live in that tiny condo. You wear hoodies. I live in the penthouse at the Crystal Tower, Sophie, not the condo I rented 10 years ago. And I wear hoodies because I like them. I don't wear them because I'm poor. I wear them because I'm rich enough not to care what people like you and Marcus think about my clothes. I let the words land, hard and sharp. I dropped out of college to take care of our mother while you went to London. I took my half of the inheritance and I built an empire. I built it from nothing. While you and the rest of the family were laughing at me, calling me a failure, I was building this. She stammered. You never said. Why didn't you say anything? Would you have listened? I shot back. Would you have believed me, or would you have just glazed over and talked about a party in Paris? I am the family failure, remember? The struggling sister, the one you were so embarrassed by. Marcus, he lost his job. She whimpered, the fight gone, replaced by a child's pathetic wail. Yes, he did, I said, my voice turning to ice. He lost his job because he was arrogant, incompetent, and tried to defraud my company. He lost his job because he humiliated a woman at a party on Saturday, not realizing she was the CEO who held his entire career in her hands on Monday. He didn't just lose his job, Sophie. He lost yours. Or did you think he loved you? He loved the idea of you. He loved your family name. He thought he was marrying into status. He just found out all the status, all the money he ever wanted, belongs to me, and he just found out he can never, ever have it. That was the final blow. I heard a sound, a sharp gasp that turned into a sob. The engagement is over, Sophie. You just don't know it yet. That man will be gone by tonight. Because the one thing he wanted, it's not you. It's me, or rather what I have, and I just told him no. I let her cry. I let her finally, after 20 years, absorb the reality of the situation. The world she had built, her entire sense of superiority, had been based on a complete and utter fiction. The sister she pitied was the one holding all the cards. The man she adored was a fraud. Her sobs were a storm, and in the middle of it, I felt a strange, quiet sense of peace. It wasn't triumph. It was just validation. The truth was finally out. The downfall was as swift as Benedict had predicted. By 4:00 p.m., Marcus had been resigned from Patterson Capital. By Tuesday morning, news of his disastrous pitch, linked to the fraudulent Sunspark tech, was already a quiet rumor on industry blogs. He was finished. Just as I had predicted, he was also gone. Sophie called me late Tuesday night, her voice hollow. He had packed his things while she was in the shower. He left his engagement ring on the kitchen counter with a one-sentence note that blamed her for everything. He'd said she had misrepresented her family's connections. The engagement was over. The social media posts were deleted. The man she thought was her brilliant future had vanished like a ghost, leaving nothing but debts and humiliation. For a week, I heard nothing. I gave her space. I ran my company, I held meetings, I finalized the acquisition that had made me so tired in the first place. My life continued. Then the following Sunday, my intercom buzzed. It was Sophie. I let her up. When she stepped out of the elevator into my penthouse, she looked small. She wasn't wearing an influencer's outfit. She was in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, her hair in a messy bun, her eyes red and puffy. She looked like a real person. She stared around my apartment, at the minimalist art, the wall of books, the sprawling view. "This is," she whispered, "this is where you live." "This is where I live," I confirmed, gesturing to the sofa. "Coffee." She just nodded, sinking into the cushion. I made 2 mugs and sat across from her. We sat in silence for a long time. "Why were you so nice about it?" she finally asked, her voice barely audible. "What do you mean?" "All those years, I was horrible to you. I called you a failure. I was embarrassed by you. Aunt Clara always said you were living in the past. We all pitied you, and you just let us. Why didn't you ever throw it in our faces?" I thought about that. I tried at first, you didn't want to hear it, and then, I guess I just got busy, what you all thought of me. It stopped mattering. I was building this. I was happy. Your opinion was just noise. It only started to matter when you brought Marcus into it, when he tried to bring his arrogance and his lies into my world, into my company. She flinched. "He was a fool." "Yes," I agreed, "he was." "I was a fool, too," she said, tears welling up in her eyes again. "I was so obsessed with the look of success. The parties, the clothes, the status, I thought you had none of it, and it turns out, you had all of it. You just didn't feel the need to show it off." "Success looks different for everyone, Sophie," I said gently. "Mine is just quieter." She looked at me, a deep, painful understanding dawning in her eyes. "You were taking care of Mom, while I was running away. I was in London and you were here, holding her hand. You gave up everything." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I didn't. I gave up that path, and it led me to this one. I don't regret it, Sophie. I wish I hadn't lost my sister in the process." That broke her. She put her face in her hands and truly wept, not with the rage of her fiancé leaving, but with the grief of 20 years of lost time, of jealousy and misunderstanding. I moved to the couch and sat next to her, putting my arm around her shoulder. She leaned into me, just like she used to when she was a little girl, and cried. It wasn't a perfect fix. It was the beginning. It was the first, tentative, healing conversation. Sophie eventually got a real job, working in marketing not for me, but for a nonprofit. She sold her flashy condo and moved into a smaller, more normal apartment. Our aunts and uncles still don't quite understand what I do, but they've stopped calling me a failure. They're mostly just confused. As for me, I am at peace. My vindication didn't come from destroying Marcus's career. That was just a business decision. It came from this. From sitting on my couch in my hoodie with my sister finally being seen.